YouTube, it's part 5 of the Phoenix Evolution 2.6 meter. It takes me that long to walk down the length of it. It's awesome. Really excited to see this thing fly. Amazing value for the price. Seems pretty high quality. We're going to be putting this prop on next. Got to open up the prop, the spinner. Okay, so once you pop this off, then you can see there's a nut here. This nut compresses. It pulls this fixture through, and then it compresses these rings onto the shaft. So it's a prop adapter. And so you need to have a wrench, or in this case I'm just using a crescent wrench. Sizable wrench. Okay, so it's the same issue that was on the ASW28, a big old gap, which makes that really ugly, and I hate that. It's like, really? You guys couldn't get that to be a little deeper? So I'm sort of reluctant to modify it just quite yet, but I'm not so reluctant that I'm not going to do it. I think I am going to go ahead and do that. I just have to figure out how to get this pointed over here because it's still attached halfway, you know, and I don't want to take the motor out of the plane, obviously. So I'm wondering if I can just go like this. Super awkward. And what I'm going to do is basically see how far that needs to be back. And then I'm going to compare it to this other choice, which is this aluminum spinner. I actually kind of like them both. But as was true with the ASW28 when I put it together, this seems to be a little bit better fit, and having the right size spinner makes a pretty big difference in the look. Okay, so this is how I'm going to determine how much to cut off of the prop shaft, and it's such an easy thing to do. It's a bit of a no-brainer. I'm going to take these. And by the way, my battery's been dead for a long time because they're really expensive. Like 10 or 11 bucks. I think I only spent like 10 bucks on these things. So I just look at the gauge. So I want to cut about half a centimeter, which would be 5 millimeters. And then that's still going to give us just a little bit. Well, no, I want to go a little less than that because I have to give a gap. So I'm going to go about 2.5 centimeters off. So we'll loosen this nut. We'll lay this to the side. We'll go ahead and get our safety gear on. And then we can take and use this thing so we have a lot of control. Now, how are we going to mark this? It's going to be a little tricky. So I think we'll try this first and see if it works. You can always just guess and check, but if you can do it a little bit more for sure, that's probably a good idea. Okay, so I'm just going to stick this on there loose before I wrap it. I'm going to measure out my 2.5 millimeters. Okay, so that's actually pretty close to 2.5 millimeters. And I'm just going to wrap this around, and then I'm going to cut it. Well, I hate it when that happens. So my cutting disc broke. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and get something to cool down that tip of the prop shaft so we don't compromise the motor. I'd hope to have it totally done. Boy, that made a real big mess, didn't it? That isn't very cool. Hope it didn't damage anything. Nah, it doesn't look like it did. I didn't realize I had the magnet under here, but evidently I did. That wasn't really by plan, it's just the way it worked out. So the magnet has picked up all this metal fragment, which is also kind of annoying. It's hard to get off magnets. If you ever do get that, you can just take a piece of tape and it'll stick to the tape usually. Then you can put your rare earth magnet back where it's supposed to be. And then obviously in this case I'm going to go ahead and get a new grinding cutting disc, and I'm going to finish this cut. But in the meantime, let's see how the gap is now. Yeah, we got quite a little bit to go. So I'll pause it and get a new blade on there. Okay, so I got a new blade on here, so we'll just pick up where we left off. Okay, so as you can see, I did this on the ASW28 and I had about the same results. I didn't break the blade on my cutting tool, but let's see if it fits better. Oh yeah, that's a lot shorter gap, but I want more. So we're going to take a little bit more off. And I'll come back and show you what it looks like here in just a second, guys. Alright folks, so we got it cut and we have a good fit now. As you can see, the gap is significantly less. So that should help a lot with the overall finish of the plane. Super easy modification. The only thing you'll run into problems with on is if you do that and then you switch to a different variety of spinner, you might want to have a little bit more shaft to hang on to. Okay, so I've got that very tight. Okay. So now our next test will be to go ahead and balance this if it's out of balance, or if the perception is it's out of balance, or if my perception is that it's out of balance. Weird thing is I don't often have problems with balance on spinning props. You'd think it'd be worse. There's another couple moving parts at least. Or folding props. Did I say spinning props? I think I might have. If I did, that was very dumb. Most props spin. Okay, so I'm having trouble getting that tight with the factory screwdriver, so I'm going to grab a little bit higher quality one, hope it fits. Yeah, it does. Okay, good. So now our next step will be to go ahead and fire up the motor. Throttle cuts on. Now for this, I don't want to use the same battery. I'll probably go ahead and use the 2200 3S, even though I don't know that that's the pack I'll use in regular operation. And the reason I'm going to go with the 2200 3S is just for the simple fact that I've got a lot of capacity to work with. And if this test takes a little bit of time, I won't stress the pack because I don't want to damage it. Now the other thing is there's a pretty significant amount of counterweight up here. I'd like to remove it if I end up running this on 2200 3S. but I don't know that that's going to be the case. So we'll go ahead and get our radio system on. Okay, throttle 6 down, throttle cuts on. Make sure we have clearance here. Not sure how that's going to work. We might have to resituate things a little bit, like this. Okay, not an overly large prop. We'll slide this forward a little bit. Okay, so that should get us into a safe area where we'll be good to go to run the prop. And I took off my safety glasses, but I'll just throw those on just to be on the safe side. When that thing blew up the other minute, it kind of reminds me it's a good idea to have the safety glasses on. And then of course you want to make sure you're going to clear everything. So throttle cut is still on. We'll go ahead and fire this up. Let everything initiate. Okay, so that lack of that high beep means that we got our braking on. So first things first, we'll shut off the throttle cut, hold the fuse, make sure it doesn't move. It didn't. Get myself in a slightly better spot. We're going to go ahead and kick up the throttle. Ooh, so far so good. Doesn't feel especially out of bounds. Oh yeah. Good amount of power. Blowing everything around back there, of course. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to mess with that. Throttle cuts on and tested. Cleared the timer. I'm satisfied with that. So I'm not going to mess with it anymore. We're good. So now one real quick tip, a simple tip, but it's an effective one, is if you have some rubber bands, you go ahead and grab a single rubber band, then you can put it around the nose of your aircraft to keep those prop blades from flopping around constantly, because what will happen is you'll actually eventually damage either the prop, or you'll catch the canopy, or you'll be flipping it around to carry it through the house and you'll catch an edge of your trim or something annoying like that, and you'll be like, darn you, Brian, for not warning us. But for now, we are really close to putting this thing in final to go fly it right now. So I'm really excited, but the thing is we do have to figure out how to get our stabilizer in place. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug the battery. We'll lay this to the side. We'll shut off our transmitter. And what has to happen is we have to find a way to mount this so that all the wires reach. And the ESC is down here. And the wire comes up in just a totally stupid way. So I'm going to actually unplug it. And then I'm going to put it down underneath. Use these forceps for that and make it a little easier. I don't really know why it comes up like that. Because that was like the easy way to do it, or maybe I did that. I don't know. I can't remember. But either way, I'm gonna poke it down through this little spot, and then I'll just carry it through. If I can get the ferrite core to fit. That ferrite core is a magnet that's in the shape of a circle, and it's supposed to help mitigate some of the noise that would be picked up. RF and the noise from all the electronics on this system. Okay, so we got that through. It did fit fine. A little tight. Nothing you can't get to work. Okay, so now I'm going to just grab this and pull it back up. That ferrite core takes up a whole lot of the length of this cable, though. I'm somewhat tempted to maybe just take the whole thing off, or at least take a couple loops out. But I think I'm gonna be dissuaded from that. If the engineers put it there, there's a reason they put it there. Granted, these are the same engineers that sent me that screw that was like gone. So, alright, cool. So, I'm going to plug in my hot glue gun. When we get this all set up and positioned the way we want, we should be able to go ahead and, we'll glue these. Everything that's plugged in here will be glued. But of course we'll be able to detach these cables here, these 3 cables at the quick disconnect points. Now the other thing is I'd like to get these antenna spread out for the diversity range, and I want to cut this. So what I'll do is I'll glue these together first, and then I can unplug the whole thing at once and open the case, and I'll show you how I move those antennas. And then these 2 cables are really not being too much trouble. I may just tuck those loose, but for now I'm going to leave them attached so it's easy to manipulate and reposition this. Now obviously there's nothing hooked up to the gear channel because the gear channel is going to be reserved for on-off. Channel 5 is the gear channel on this, and the rationale behind that is, like, for instance, I'm using an 18-channel radio. If you have a 5-channel radio like DX5, you can still turn the stabilizer on and off. However, Lemon, if you're listening, why not put the master gain on channel 5, and then channel 8 you can do an on-off, or better yet, just have master gain period, and you make it so you can turn it on and off with the gain. You have a switch to turn it on and off, or you have a master gain to turn it on and off. Either way, if you have a programmable radio, you can program it to act like an on-off, plus then that frees up another channel for something else. So if you're listening, which I doubt you are, that would be a huge improvement. I've already figured out how to hack it so that you can use channel 5, and if you want to know how to do that, just watch my ASH 26 video series. This is a composite glider with I ended up cutting flaps in, so you can see how I did that. And then you can actually use this channel, but you can only use this little band of it at the top of the range. You have to expand the range to 150 minus like 5%, and then you use this little bit up here, and then anything below will actually turn the stabilizer on and off. So anyway, so this is getting hot, so that's going to get hot, and as soon as that's hot, we'll be able to go ahead and pick up where we left off, which is going to be gluing that connector, those connectors in. And if you're ever waiting for a hot glue gun to get hot and you're impatient like me, just this will make it hot quick. And it works every time it's tried. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and glue this here. And we'll just bridge over a little bit of glue. Now if you had an extremely weight sensitive application, I wouldn't recommend using hot glue. But mine, I don't think this one's going to be an extremely weight sensitive situation we're going to be dealing with. So we're going to let that set up for just a second and cool. Oh wow, look at that. Those screws went in when I was cutting the motor off. That's crazy. So while we're waiting on the glue to dry, why don't we get those screws out, because we're going to need those so we can put the wing on here shortly. See what I'm talking about? There's like 450,000 threads on there. Doesn't feel very tight either. Feels wiggly. I don't like wiggly bolts. Makes me think it's the wrong size thread, and it makes me nervous. But for now, we're just going to put them here and not be nervous. Alright, so this glue is clearly set up. Did you get it clearly? Because it's clear. Sorry, that's enough, I promise. Alright, so this has been detached, and so our objective here is, because these antenna, the two antennas, the diversity antennas, if you will, come out from the side, which is another design I'm not crazy about on this Lemon, but I really, really like the Lemon RX. I'm going to move it to the end so that they come out the end. I'm going to show you how to do it. It's super easy. You do need a really small screwdriver to get in there, and I always forget that. So I have this super dinky one. Pop out the two screws. Be careful, these cases are the Achilles heel of the Lemon RX line. It's the cheapest and crappiest part of the system. And that's the no BS approach there, guys. I love the system. I hate the case. The case is junk. But that's okay. I mean, honestly, it's not really that critical. you could run it without the case, and I have done that. Not on a stabilizer one, I've done it on a 6-channel. Don't break the tab off here. The tab right there, you don't want to break it off. Well, I mean, well, I shouldn't say you don't want to. I don't want to. Okay, so now that drops down, and you can see we have 2 antennas here that are mounted to the RF board. Okay, the Dsm X Communication. Okay, so I'm going to pull on this. It's like a coax cable. And we'll just kind of situate those so that they go the direction we want. Keeping in mind that this has an internal cable and then an external sheath around it that protects it. And you want to be careful not to kink it at all, because kinking this will very much adversely impact its performance. So the first thing I do when I relocate these is I usually cut this off. The second thing I do is I cut this off. The third thing I do is I take a knife that's sharp and I go smooth that little edge up. And then you're left with basically a naked cabinet that's going to allow you to put the hole where you want it. So I'm going to go ahead and I usually do this with heat, so I'm just going to do it the way I always do it. I was thinking I might try it with that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do it the way I always do it, which has worked for me in the past. So I'm going to go ahead and heat this thing up. One hole, 2 hole. Okay, so once you get your holes in there, you can clean them up if you need to. I use those to mix my paint. Just like that. Okay, and then the inside there's a little nasty edge, so I'm going to go ahead and very carefully cut that off as well, because that'll be sharp-ish. Okay, then you can see where those are going to go. It's not really rocket science, unless you're flying a rocket, and then it is rocket science, I suppose. Feed the antenna through, just like this. Get it where you want it, just like this. And then what you're going to do is you need to put a bit of a strain relief in there so that the antennas aren't damaged by normal movement and wear and tear. And you don't want them to become dislodged from the board itself. So I usually take and do a bit of a twist or a cross or something like that. And yes, you can actually replace these antennas, by the way. As you can see, they're not overly long antennas. So this is going to be my stream relief, and I want to get away from the components on the board. I'm going to just do one little quick dab of hot glue. Keep it light, keep it simple. Lick your thumb, which sounds weird and gross, and it kind of is, but too bad. Just like that, okay? Hold it down. That's going to give you some relief. If a cable would get yanked, you're not going to transmit that through to the board. Okay, so then you can go ahead and slip those back through. Yeah, and come on. Oh, so gone. I need to move over my hole a little bit. I need to go over another 3 millimeters. Sometimes that happens. Or I could unglue them, but this will be just as easy. I don't mind having an extra hole there. Not gonna hurt anything. I'm just feeling gung-ho. I'm just going to go ahead and do 4 holes. suppose it's better to have 4 holes than none, right? Whoa. There we go. Alright. So now back through the hole. Oh, we got that nasty edge again. Gotta knock that off, guys. Don't want to find out that the nasty edge is gonna come back to bite us. Okay, feed those both through. Oh yes, gorgeous. Gorgeous. Wait, do I need to use my other hole? Goodness gracious. I really sucked it up on these holes today. See? I mean, that's life, I guess, but glad I did both of them. Yes! There you go. And I'm not super concerned about this case, like I said. It's probably the weakest part of the Lemon RX system. That's okay. I forgive them. I really like this system, though. I use it all the time, guys. If Horizon Hobby would get with the times and realize that this is the competition, they'd probably make some more money. But they don't sell something that's price competitive, not even close. They run specials like, oh, if you buy 3 of the exact same thing that cost 5 times as much as this, we'll give you 20% off. Like, oh yeah, that's a great deal. It's like if you buy a Ferrari, we'll give you 5% off when you're in the market for an Escort. So, do they even make Escorts anymore? I don't know. Okay, so there you have it. Now the antennas come out the right side, the side that's right for our application. Now we just need to put these screws back in, and being extremely mindful that these screws are dinky and they're very easy to lose, and you will break the case if you're not careful. And I'm not talking about McGruff breaking the case. I'm talking about you'll actually cross-thread the hole and you'll be done with it. Okay, so now if you guys have seen my other build series, I usually do some sort of a tray or something that holds the antenna and or holds the whole receiver. And this plane will probably not be different in that I have to set it down in. And I honestly think it's probably, since all my wires come through that hole, I'm probably going to set it down this way. Well, I don't know. I don't think I have enough length to go the other way. So I think I have to go that way. So what I need to do is I need to make something out of something. And normally I would use clear, but for the sake of video, it doesn't need to be very strong. It just needs to help position the antennas. That's it. That's all I'm trying to do. So this stuff's super thin, and thin is good. Less chance of RF interference, right? Because there's nothing there to interfere with. So I'm just going to take this little plastic. This might be just a bit too thin because it may not even hold those wires the direction I want them to go. But let's see. So what I usually do is I'll stick this to the bottom of the case with some glue. I think this might be almost a little bit too flimsy. I'm gonna try. This surface is much more sturdy, and I'll go a little bit bigger too. So guess and check, guys. We'll just do it this way. Then we'll keep this little bend around the edge. I don't remember what this is from. It's some kid's toy, I think. My kids get these packages and I keep them and use them for garbage projects. Then I'm just going to trim it into somewhat of an L shape. Make sure there's no sharp edges because you don't like getting stabbed by this junk, I'm sure. Any more than I do. And the cool thing is this thing will bend a little bit to let us to get it in position, but it's not going to be so strong that it can't be worked into a corner. Oh yeah, that's better. So now I can sit here and tape this on and get that antenna exactly in the configuration I want. Now you can cross these things if you want, if you have to. It's not a big deal. But the idea is 90 degrees of each other is the best possible case. So like that would be acceptable, but you want to try to keep them straight. And you don't want to put these into something that's going to be a strong tube, because the tube will probably cause interference. I've run into that once on my ArcSM. So I'll just do this. The easiest way I've found to do it is to use masking tape. Is super easy to take off, and then you won't compromise the strength, the structural integrity of the cable if you go to peel this off later. Plus it's high visibility, you'll notice it, and if you notice it you can avoid damaging it. If you don't notice it, see, it's just so small. I did this with hot glue a couple of times and I got burned on it, because then I damaged the antennas when I took it out and moved it to a different plane. If you don't anticipate that happening, moving it to a different plane, you could conceivably not worry about it, I guess. Okay, so you see I need to get this a little bit closer, so I'm going to go with a 360 degree rotation, making sure I don't kink the wire at all. Okay, perfect. So now that I've got that situated, I'll come up here and make my bend, but you don't want to bend right there. You want to bend back here to provide some strength to the wire, because these wires are super weak. But that's not a lemon thing. That's just the nature of the technology thing. Okay, so that didn't hold down properly, so I can just reseat it like this. Okay, so that's going to hold our antennas at 90 degrees of one another. And if you had a satellite antenna, a remote antenna array, then you could put that wherever you want. Okay, so we see where our antenna ends, so we can trim this. And now that we have this situated, we can go ahead and cut off the excess so we don't have any extra weight that's unnecessary. And then when we go to sit this into the plane, it'll just work super nice and super easy. Okay, just like that. And I've done that a number of times. It's always worked really good for me. And then I'll just do a couple of really small drips of hot glue. Nothing too crazy, because this plastic will melt. Okay, so just be careful you don't melt your plastic there, like I just said. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get that glued down. I don't like that I underlapped that. That was an accident. So we'll trim that again. Okay, so now the whole idea is we can take this, and you'll notice that even if it's a little bit wider than the aircraft, you can still work that in there. And if this goes at a little bit of an angle, it's still at 90 degrees of the other antenna, which is our objective, of course. And then this little loop, it won't hurt anything at all, because it's in a safe spot relative to the antennas. And what I might do is I'll put one more bigger piece of tape over that black portion of the wire, which is insulated a little bit heavier. It's actually not where the antenna is active. The antenna that's active is up here. And you're probably wondering, hey, am I going to get signal loss if I do it in this method? I doubt it. Doubt it highly. But if you're concerned, just leave them bare. I think that the diversity is worth the extra effort. I think it's worth the extra compromise. So there you have it. It's super simple, very light. I added a couple of, maybe 2 grams, if that. Okay, so now this can be plugged in all at once, but I would like to get this assembly in here. And the other thing that I would like to do is I'd like to put it in there if I can, like this, and see how it would fit. Trouble is, I don't know if I can reach all my cables that way. Now the other thing is I can put it this way, and I'm for sure I can reach all my cables. So I may have to do that on this application. So let's go ahead and do that. So once I get all these cables plugged in, then what I would normally do is once I'm satisfied with my position, then I will go ahead and I will glue this little rib here, and that'll hold everything together. But in the meantime, I have to try to figure a way to get this in. So I'm going to go ahead and detach the wing. Because it's just... There we go. I was pulling the wrong side. Because it's just awkward sometimes to do certain steps at certain angles. And if these prove to be too short, we have longer extension cords. We can just do a little bit longer extension cord. Which I'm wondering if that's going to end up being what we have to do. Not the end of the world. It's not really a big deal which way. As long as it goes in. Now, also, make no mistake, this thing can be mounted sideways. But if it is, it's quite complicated. You have to do a lot of mixing in your radio to actually allow for that. Because your axis of rotation, and then you have to rewire, like your elevator and rudder have to be wired a different way. I did that on my Airbus A320 and on my Airbus A330-600, both. It sits vertical because it's a very narrow cavity to work with. Not looking like I'm probably going to have enough to work with on these extension cords. Dang. Okay, so if I go this way, so I think our only option is going to be to go ahead and redo that, go to a little bit longer extension cord. These were the short ones I was using. I also have these medium length is what I called them, and the difference in length is pretty minimal, but let's just double check and see if maybe one will. I don't know. It seems like it's probably not enough. If I go to long, then it goes like way longer, if I recall. And yes, I could build ends onto a longer cable, which I shorten. But I don't know if that's going to work either. Male to male, short. Okay. These ones are Ys. So, let's just try this reluctantly, very reluctantly. I'm going to try this. Okay, so we'll just peel that hot glue off. Then this red electrical tape, it's going to be really tedious to undo because I had it trimmed really nicely, but it'll still go. So we'll just switch those over. Alright, I'm going to pause it while I get that done and come right back to you guys. Alright guys, so we got that all switched around. Pulled these two white wires back a little bit. And then this stuff here, I want to bundle it together so that I can get it out nice and neat. Because I need to make every millimeter count. So what we'll do is we can either tie it up with zip ties, or we can use tape. And in this case, because of the nature of the spot we're working, we'll go ahead and go with just regular black tape. We're not going to use a ton, we're just going to use a couple of small points. And these small points are going to simply keep it neat and flat. Okay, so you got them like this. You stick it along the top and you wrap it around the bottom. It's very simple. And you could even do quite a little bit less than that and still get the job done. So just go at it like this, wrap it under, and back onto itself. Okay? And just like that until you get to the end, or very close to the end, so you're satisfied. Keeping in mind that when we're done, we'll be doing a special trick to kind of keep all that really easy to plug and unplug. And I've done it on previous planes. You probably know what it's going to be. But you'll see. If you don't, you'll see. Provided it all works out. Okay, so we got this nice, neat bundle. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to try to tuck this down in there to where we're kind of in this middle area here. Okay? But we need to have this wire come back out at us. Okay, see how that works now? So we can manipulate the antennas without damaging them. Nice, nice, nice. So now all we got to do is we have to figure out. So I wouldn't say that that's great, but it's sufficient. It's going to be enough to do what we need to do. So now our last step here is going to be to get these things held together, okay? Just like this, exactly like this. And then we're going to organize those in such a way that we have one big plug. And then we're going to get that thing held on to the bottom of the plane. So we'll come back and do this here in a minute. Now that we know that that's going to reach and fit. The only problem with this situation is that it's really difficult to adjust the trim pots for the gains. And there's just not a whole lot you can do about it in this application. I just need to be real with you. There isn't a whole lot you can do about it. So, might as well get used to it. I'm going to cut a fairly decent sized piece of tape. We're going to go halfway. And we're going to go ahead and line these up. We'll use a little bit of hot glue here shortly, but for now we'll go ahead and tape them shut, or tape them together. The idea is you want to kind of know how all this stuff is going to lie in its permanent position, but you don't want it so permanent that you can't make an adjustment. You see, got this nice little bend on there. So my hope is when we're all said and done, you'll just reach in, grab this, and blammo whammo, because you're going to be screwing with these big giant wings. Okay, so let's pull this thing forward. We got to get this ferrite core is giving me problems again. So we're going to pull it back toward us. Just going to grab it and pull it back toward us. Stuff it up under the battery tray, just like this. And then we can manipulate and relocate as necessary the receiver. Okay. Now this plane has got a round bottom on it, which is not uncommon. Normally you wouldn't want to have to mount something like this to the bottom like that because it's round, right? Well, for us it's probably not a big deal, because what we'll do is we'll just take and cut a piece of foam. It's going to be our shelf for the receiver. So you'll find a piece of foam. This one's probably a little bit too narrow. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut this shelf so that the receiver can sit up on top of it. I kind of like using this more firm foam, something like this. And we'll go widthwise, and then it's time to just start hacking away until it's perfect. Get yourself a 20,000 shim or whatever you got lying around, piece of steel. Now this we need to turn on the exhaust fan for. The exhaust fan is going to really help make us survive through this. Guys, this is the end of this video. We're going to come back. Part 6 coming. It's going to be really cool, guys. Come back for more. Don't forget to check the description below. Catch up on videos you haven't seen yet. And then also help support our partners. You can buy this from Banggood. Very, very economical plane. And check below even further and you can see other ways you can help support the channel. But thanks for being part of it. Don't forget to like and subscribe.